In this tutorial, you'll learn to unwrap the Space Marine helmet, optimize the UVs, and do a quick normal bake at the end to see those sculpted details on our low poly mesh. Let's get into UVing it. So let's actually start with the skull, because I think this is the easiest, because all we need to do is just press U and really unwrap it. And for what it's worth, this works well enough, because there's no real like sharp angles or anything on the sorts of this. The only thing I am going to change, and if you did the Recon modelling and texturing series, you'll be familiar with this, but I'm just going to select all of these edges down the middle here. I'm just going to go S, X, and 0 to flatten them out. Press P to pin them, which will be more apparent in vertex select mode, so you can see those are red, so those are pinned. And then if we re-unwrap it, it'll just make sure that the unwrap is conforming to those pinned verts there, and keep everything a little bit more straighter, so you can sort of see we've taken out a bit of the stretch that was apparent in the original and sort of straightened everything out a bit. And also, sorry, I realised I had this display stretch already on. If you just come to your overlays in the UV tab here, you can just enable UV stretch, which I find handy to be on, just sort of gives you a bit more information about how well or poor the UVs are. In my case, since I'm teaching UVs, probably poor. Alright, let's get into doing the helmet next. So it's not actually too complicated, at least I didn't think it was. So let's start by just cutting out the main portion of the helmet. And in doing this, let's start with the back here. So let's just cut a seam along this back crease here. So we'll just go up and around. And it's a bit of a pain. I was going to go into... Actually, I might just go inside of the helmet here. So I'm just going to cut the crease up and around the back of the inside here, just to hide the seam away a little bit better. And we can come back on the outside. And just sort of repeat on the other side here. So I think we're cutting down this way into here. And then we'll sort of do like a bit of a zigzag down onto here. And we can follow this cut right down through here, and let's go on the outside of this triangle here. So we're not going to go on the inside, we'll go on the outside of the triangle and just cut that down to the base here, because we'll also mark a seam around the bottom here. I think there's one more just there. And then we just need to repeat the same on this side. And unfortunately with this one, just because we've done more unique detailing with the sculpting pass that we did for all the damage, we're not going to have any mirrored UVs here, I don't believe. I think they're all going to be unique UVs. Once again, that's just a phrase I've sort of coined. I don't know if that's a proper way of describing UVs, but pretty much we're not going to have any overlapping or mirrored UVs as far as I'm concerned. We might have the capacity for it, but we'll wait and see. So let's just go ahead and mark those as a seam, select everything, and unwrap angle based. And so we've got something going on here. So, you know, we've got the bottom part of the helmet cut out, which is handy. And then we've got the top mohawk shape in very much a non-suggestive shape at all. So that's really good. All right, let's start to clean the back up. So let's sever this back part here from the plating. So let's go ahead, let's mark a seam along this edge that's tucked away in the back here. So I'm just going to go ahead and mark a seam along there. So now I've just attached that from that big part of the UVs there. And that's sitting over here now. And then so if we're looking at this, you can sort of see we're getting a bit of stretching in the corners here. I don't think it's too obnoxious, but then these circles here, so these parts are representing these little bits that we modelled in here. You're getting zero texel, well not zero, but you're getting like, you know, bugger all texel density in here. So we can cut these away and make them their own separate islands to let them flourish a little bit more. So I'm just going to alt select these outer loops here. So let's just go Control E, we'll mark seam, and we'll unwrap that. And I still don't think they look great, and that's mainly because we're still including like these outer edges here. So what I think we might do is I'm going to actually try something different from what I did in my practice. Let's cut a seam on these ones here. So let's go mark seam, unwrap. Let's just see how that looks. I don't know if I like that result. Actually, what if we try... If this doesn't work, I'll just go to the result that I did in my actual practice. But let's just try a cut on the inside here. Instead, mark seam, let's unwrap that. I think that looks pretty good. And then for like the exterior parts, I think it might be best. It's a little bit different from the way I practiced it. I'm just going to change my select length to seam. And let's go ahead, let's cut a seam on the inside here, so let's just cut through there. Let's cut another one through here, Control E, mark seam, let's unwrap that. And I just want to check, can we get this to unwrap nicely? So if I just select this face here, Shift H, I'm going to scale Y0, scale Y0 here, scale X0. And the reason I'm doing this is because I just want to make one completely square or rectangular face here. So I'll just, oops, just want to isolate this. So I've done that, and I hope this works. I haven't actually practiced this one yet. I know this works for other instances. But so I'm just going to deselect that face that we squared out, so to speak, made into a perfect rectangle. And then select it so it's the active face, U, and we'll go unwrap, follow active quads, length average. Okay, yeah, that works really quite nicely. And so now we've got this nice square going on. We're definitely still getting some stretching, but I think it should pack rather nicely. And I don't think, I could be completely wrong and out of my depth here, like most things with UVing, but I don't think it's going to cause us any problems. Might cause some problems later, but we'll wait and see.
Cross that bridge when we come to it.
But let's just do that for the other one as well here. So I'm just going to Shift H. So I think it was this one. So I'm just going to go Shift H to isolate that. So scale Y0, scale Y0, scale X0 for both of the sides. Just like that. Unhide everything. And then I'll L select this, face select mode, Shift H, deselect, reselect, U, and follow active quads. Cool. So technically we could make these overlap, potentially. So we'll just wait and see. And I'm going to pin these just so that if we do any more unwraps, so if I go unwrap, it doesn't, yeah, cool, it won't affect them. So I'm just going to pin those just so we don't accidentally undo that. And actually, while we're sort of doing these length averages, this piece here, which I know to be the little set of vents at the front, these do not look fantastic with the way they're being unwrapped at the moment. So let's do something very similar. So just in the 3D viewport, I'm just going to select the middlemost face just so it's easier to see. And same process, so I'm just going to go Shift H to isolate this face. Actually, you might not even need to Shift H to isolate because we've already isolated all this. So let's just go ahead, scale X0, scale X0, scale Y0, and scale Y0. And then select everything, select that face, unwrap from active quads. And you'll notice we'll get some distortion on the end here. And that's mainly because, well, one, there's a corner, and just this is more of like a trapeze shape than a perfect rectangle, but I'm not too concerned about it, just especially given the fact that that's tucked away right into the corner. In all honesty, we probably don't need that side face there. I'm just going to leave it for the hell of it. But yeah, I'm not too worried about that stretching there. But anyway, let's get back to doing the back plate before I got sidetracked. And so I'm just going to cut this out altogether. So I'm just going to sever this from the back. So just select these, Control E, mark seam. Actually, sorry, I just want to make sure before I continue, I'm just going to pin all of these as well. So just press P on those so you can see those are red, just so it doesn't affect any of our unwrapping. So we'll just unwrap that. And then if we take a look at this, right, we have resolved some of the stretching just a little bit. We haven't really resolved what's going on in the corners here. So what I'm going to do, quite simply, is we're just going to make a cut on these edges here. So Control E, mark seam. Actually, I'm pretty sure I'm just going to enable live unwrap here, just so I don't have to consistently unwrap everything. So now when I go Control E, mark seam, it will just automatically unwrap the object for me. And now you can see it's alleviated that stretching in the corner there. but we did unwrap that as its own thing, so I'll just have to re-unwrap it anyway. Kind of didn't save myself an extra button press there. But I think this is just nicer because now we could go ahead and sort of straighten this out later on. Well, actually, don't even need to do it later on. Let's just do it right now. So I'm just going to alt select this back row of edges here. Like so, I'm just going to go S, X, and 0. P to pin them all. A to select everything U and unwrap. And that just gives us a much nicer sort of squared off design here. Well, design, island. And it's definitely not perfect because we're picking up like this part here, but it doesn't really seem to, I don't think it's too problematic. And it's not perfectly straight. So they're a bit curved. I don't think it's going to be the end of the world somehow. Let's address this monstrosity because this is like the main portion of the helmet here. So let's go ahead and let's separate this from these side parts here. So on the UVs, these parts and these parts are the same. So I just want to separate those out because it's all looking a bit strange and distorted. So I'm just going to go inside the helmet here. And let's start to cut this away from itself. So let's start at this edge, and I'm just going to select up and around, whoops, on the creased edge here, so the innermost edge. And looking at this, I don't know if I picked up on this when I recorded this a year ago, but this area in here is going to cause horrific normal baking errors for us, which is fun. They won't be visible, but the normal map just won't look as nice as a result, but oh well. That's the benefit of learning more in a year since you recorded your initial tutorial instead of following it up immediately. So let's mark those as seams. Okay, cool. So we can see we've cut that away, and honestly, this island doesn't look too bad, but I'm not going to have that be the resolution for it. So let's go ahead and let's just separate like this front piece down here from the two bits of the ears on the side. So I'm going to select on the outside here, just into there. Just do the same here, so let's mark that as a seam. And where did that go? Okay, cool. So that's that little chin piece here, so that's been separated. And then, what else have we got going on here? So let's just isolate these islands. I'm just going to go Shift H. Let's cut up and around the boundaries of this. So let's go up and around here. Bring this down into there. And we'll just do the same on the other side. So we'll just go up, down to there. So let's go Control E, mark seam. And so I think that's nicer. I just don't like, so these two islands I think are fine. I don't like how we've got this massive bloody row of faces connected to, you know, this section here. I think that's just a bit of a nightmare to work with. So what we can do, that's a bit cheap and nasty, but let's just chuck a seam in here just so we can sort of isolate that big that big front face, goodness, sorry, as its own island. And I think that looks much nicer. Jesus. I don't know how to speak sometimes, honestly. And let's unwrap that. And it's a bit annoying because the ones that we have pinned are just getting ignored when it's doing the automatic packing, far out. But it's alright because we'll definitely do some manual orientations of everything later. And so I think this is looking pretty alright. The only other thing I want to address are just these big circular pieces on the side because I don't think they've unwrapped nicely. So what we can do, let's mark a seam around this part here. So we can just try to lay out the outermost part of this design completely flat. So just around there. So let's mark those as seams. And so I think that works pretty well. Like we're definitely getting some stretching where we've got the angles here. For these two big circular pieces here, what we'll do is just on the back. So I'm just going to select a row of edges in the back there. And do the same here. So I'm just going to go Control E, mark seam. And then where did these wound up? No, these ones here. So we've got both of these, and then we can just do the same thing from before. So let's just find a face that's roughly in the middle. Well, actually, where's the opposite side? So this would be near to the middle. So I'm just going to shift. Oh, actually, no, I don't need to shift H. It's alright, it's just a waste of time. So I'm going to go SY0, SY0, and then SX0 on the outer ones. SX0. And then I'm thinking I should be able to control both of these from this one. So if I just go U and follow active quads. Okay, no, it only does it for the one on that side, so I'll need to do it manually here again. So I'm just going to hide this. Oops. I'll just hide that one. And we'll just do the same here. Let's go with this one because this looks a little bit more conformed already. SY0. SY0. Cool, we'll select everything and then unwrap, follow active quads. Cool, so those are nice and square. Just going to pin those again. Actually, for the ones that I've pinned, I might actually just move them outside of the UV space. Just to make things a little bit easier to see when we unwrap our other meshes, the other islands. Should just make everything a little bit easier for us. Cool, alright. I'm thinking, we'll just wait and see how we're going for texel density later on, but I'm thinking we'll probably scale these up because I feel like on the normal map you're going to lose a lot of detail in there. Yeah, we'll just wait and see. That's a future problem. But for the most part, I think this is pretty good. The one adjustment I'm going to make is just to the bottommost part, so the underside of the helmet here. So I'm just going to isolate this. I'm just going to rotate this, just eyeball it, just to roughly try to get this middle row of edges completely straight. And then you can probably guess the process. I'm just going to go SX0, pin all of these, unwrap, and angle based. So we've just straightened that out. And typically with the bottom side of the helmet, I normally scale it down in the final part of the UVing process anyway, because you're not really going to see or pay much attention to the underside of the helmet, so I don't see it as holding as much value. But that's the main part of the helmet, which is cool. The faceplate is very, very simple to do. I'm really struggling with my words today. So let's cut along the top bridge here. So just along here. And up and through here. So you'll notice we're actually going to cut some seams through our bits of damage. But that's alright. You can, even if it doesn't line up perfectly like this, I could also, if I wanted to, sort of connect that. It's not going to matter all too much because we'll dirty and grunge up the damage zones and our textures anyway. So it's really going to help to hide the seams when we get to that part. And so we can do another one here. So I'll start to cut a seam through here. This one's a bit different. I know what I just said and I'm about to go directly against it, but I don't really want to have to do something like that. It's just a bit jagged. So I'm actually just going to use my knife tool in this instance and do that. I suppose that doesn't validate what I said just a moment ago, but the fact that it doesn't matter. But yeah, probably just down to my OCD of wanting it all to look pretty for a Warhammer thing. I don't know if pretty and Warhammer normally go in the same sentence. And let's just continue up along this side here. Control E, mark seam, unwrap. Cool, so that's roughly laid out the faceplate pretty flat. You'll notice the biggest issue are just these vents on the inside here. So what I'm going to advocate for is if we alt select the inner blue bevel line, it doesn't really need to be there technically, but it's just left over from applying things earlier. So if we just select that, and we'll just do that for all of these here. So just go through, select these, oops. So we'll just go Control A, we'll just mark these as seams. And so now you can see we've got a very nice flat layout for our face plate there. Jeez. And then the final thing I want to do is, just because you'll notice that these UVs for the interior of the vents here is very, very distorted. So I'm just going to alt select the innermost edge here and then just cut up on the inside, so just between these points. So I'll just do one example here, so I'll just mark this as a seam. And so you can see that the result that that's giving there. So that's that UV there, and then the singular one on the inside. And I reckon we can most definitely go through and straighten these out as well, but we'll just go ahead and do the rest of these really quickly, and then we can fix those up. So just go there, select between those points, there again. And were we doing those on the outside? We were. Might be better tucked away if they were on the inside, but I don't think it's going to make a world of difference. I kind of feel like in most of your renders with the lighting setup, these will be occluded by shadow. Cool. So there might actually be some capacity to have these overlap as well, which would be pretty cool. So let's just go ahead. I'm just going to select all of these, Shift H to isolate them. And let's do our same routine here. So I think from what I learned before, we're going to have to do these individually. But let's go SX0, X0, Y0. And I'll probably just do this for one, and then I'll just skip ahead so you don't have to see me do this 5 more times, because you've already seen it done several times over now for the active quads. Cool. So yeah, I'll just skip over me doing the rest of these because it's probably not that interesting to watch me do it 5 more times. And we'll pick up once I've finished that up. Okay, cool. So that's done. I don't know why, but they did turn out at different sizes. I can't rightfully explain that. And even if I Control A to average them, it still doesn't really fix them. So they're not going to be able to overlap, but I don't think it's the end of the world. At least they're square, they will pack a lot nicer that way. And then these ones at the bottom, once again, I don't even know if I could get these to overlap like natively in Blender, just because, I don't know, it lays things out weirdly sometimes, and the vertex positions are just not exact, even though the shapes are the same, so I really don't know. It confuses me a bit. But anyway, it's not going to be the end of the world. Let's see, what's going on with this? This is that strip here. Let's just cut this in half because it's a bit long. So I'm just going to select that middle edge there, Control E. Let's just mark that as a seam. These are not pretty by any means. Actually, I didn't clean these up in my practice either, so that's good. What if we do the other method? Let's just select the outside, SX0, PAU Unwrap. Yeah, look, that's I think it will just pack a little bit better, like, because having the big curve and all that is just a bit of a pain. So I'm just going to go with this as my solution here. So I'm just going to select the outside, SX0, P to pin them, AU Unwrap. And you know what, that is going to be good enough. So I'll just put them up back to back. And let's just move those off as well. And then the only other thing we need to do is just sort out the bottom part here, which is just this section. So let's just cut away the bottom part here. I'm just thinking, actually, what I want to do is let's just cut actually, I'm only going to need to cut it there because that will sever it off. Because if sorry, I'm just having a brain fart here. Let's mark seam. That kind of helps loosen things up, which is what we want. And then I think, let's select that edge, this one and this one. So we're sort of going to like that zigzag lightning sort of look there. So let's do the same in here. Control E, mark seam. That didn't cut away the way, because we need to cut that edge as well. Oops, that one there, Control E, mark seam. There we go, cool. Alright, so we've cut those away, and now we've sort of got this going on, which I'm not a fan of. So, I might also need to... Actually, I wonder, could we get away with, for the faceplate, because this isn't like a massive difference in angle here, so could we get away with actually removing these, oops, can't select it, these seams here. So Control E, let's just clear seam. And then sort of resolve this just by cutting the bottom off. So if I just do a seam around there, and then do the same on the other side. Oops, Control E, mark seam. Does that work? Bit stretch there. But for the most part, I think that works. Oh yeah, I think that works much better. Because then we're getting sort of like a nice flat unwrap for this. I know there's probably a bit of angle discrepancy there for the UV, but I mean, it's behind itself, so you're never going to see that. So yeah, I think that should be all right. And I just want to make sure we've got everything pinned that needs to be pinned, which is all those. Cool, so that's our faceplate done. Awesome, so I can just hide that and hide the main portion of the helmet. The visor lines or whatever these are, I don't know what you call them. We can just simply U to unwrap those, and we don't need to do them individually. We can just have those be mirrored. So I'm just going to move that outside the UV space. And actually, while I'm thinking of it, I just want to make sure we've applied the scale correctly on these, because that's something I do forget to do, and it does profoundly impact UVing. So those are all good. Cool, so that was just the scale that I forgot. Alright, and I don't think we did any sculpting on these vent parts here, which is kind of going to be handy. So I lied, sorry, there are going to be mirrored UVs, because we can mirror these, which is handy, since we didn't do any unique sculpting on them. So let's just L-select this area here, Shift-H. So let's just cut here, and then do another cut on the inside, and just like that. So we'll just sort of do like as if we were cutting every single face individually. Control E, mark seam. Might actually have to unwrap that first before the automatic unwrapper works. Cool, so that worked out quite nicely. Isolate this, sorry. SX0 and SX0 here. Select everything, select that face, unwrap, follow active quads. Yeah, get a bit of stretching, but mind you, most of that will be covered up by the tubing. But I think that will pack a lot nicer. And then let's see, can we get cleaner results on this? I mean, it's doing the length average, so does it matter which one of the faces I'm using? If you do know the answer to that, I'd actually genuinely be interested to know, because in my mind, if it's using an average of everything, then the active one shouldn't matter. It's like following the active quad, but then it's using the average. I don't know. Let's just chuck with text tools, let's just get a checker map onto this. So yeah, I mean, there's a bit of stretching around here, which you can see, but I don't think it's the end of the world. I don't know, because there is also like you can unwrap, instead of length average, you can do even, which I think would just be far worse. That's not better at all. Alright, I'm just going to go with length average, and yeah, that might not be best practice somehow, but I'm just going to run with it because I'm a little bit confused myself there. Sorry, I don't mean to teach bad methods. It's just UV is not my strong suit. I'm trying to get better. I'm trying, but I recognise I am not the best at doing this. And let's try the same for this. Follow active quads. Square that up. And for this one, I don't know if it's a little bit skewed, which I don't love, but I don't really know if there's much I can do for that. I'm just going to leave it. I don't think it's worth our time. So let's turn our attention to, let's do the back cylinder here first, because this is a very easy one. So I'm just going to mark a seam there, and then I'll just cut one on the inside here so we can hide this seam better. So Control E, mark seam. And so we get something like that. I'm not sure if there's something wrong with my eyes today, but none of the circular UVs look circular to me. I don't know if that's just me, but it looks like it's all jagged. I have no idea. There's probably something wrong with my eyes. And then I think this quad here looks pretty squared already. SY0. SX0, SY0, and SX0. Cool. Select all that, and we'll unwrap follow active quads. See, that works really nicely. So I don't know, maybe because of the... No, but the other shape was curved as well. I don't understand. Well out of my depth here. Alright, let's just move that out. And I don't think I've pinned anything, which is not good because that means we can very, very easily undo all that work. So let's just pin it now to be safe. And then the final thing, so the only thing we haven't unwrapped is the tube. And I've done this intentionally because I actually screwed something up when I applied the array modifier. And that being the fact that I didn't actually have the merge attribute enabled for the array modifier. So if I try to L-select any of these, you'll notice they're all individual pieces at the moment, which is not what we want. So what we can do is we can just L-select the parts that we've just unwrapped. I'm just going to set it to normal, so we select everything. I'm just going to hide all that so we can get rid of it. And then simply let's just A to select everything. And then I'll just use merge by distance. And that will clean up all of the overlapping verts there. And now it is a singular object, which is handy. I don't know why that got left behind. And this is a really, really easy one to unwrap. So I'm just going to find this edge on the inside here that you'll never see. So this seam will be perfectly hidden. Control E, mark seam. And so now we've got this going on. And we can quite simply, I'm just going to try to find the middlemost point. I'm just going to go cursor to selected because I kind of feel like that will give me a good indication of where the center is. I'm just going to go with this square here, so SX0, SX0, SY0, and SY0. There's probably some tools to do this better, but I don't know what they are. Actually, I think text tools might actually offer some of these. I should probably muck around with these more before the next tutorial I do so that we can do this more efficiently. And get that. Cool. Alright. And I definitely want to pin all of these as well. I'm just going to do a quick check a map on this. Yeah, I think that looks pretty nice. Yeah, so there is definitely a little bit of stretching there, but I don't think it's going to be the end of the world somehow. Cool, so that is most of the helmet unwrapped. We really just need to do these screws and bolts at the back here. So I'm just going to go unwrap once. We don't actually need to unwrap these like more rivet looking shapes. We just need to do these ones here. And all we're going to do for these is I'm just going to mark a seam on these points and then just mark a seam down the back here. So Control E, mark seam. And then you could only guess what we're going to do to these curved ones. Just doing the follow active quad. So SY0, SY0, SX0, and the same for here. And select that face, U, follow active quads. And then we'll just do the same for this one here. SX0, SY0. Cool. And we can select this, the active face, follow active quads. Beautiful. And we'll just pin those and just drag them down here. Cool. Fantastic. All right. So that is everything unwrapped now. And so we'll get into doing all the UV layouts and optimizations. So let's just select, everything here. And I probably should have started my UV editing. All right. So, pretty sure I've already checked that we've got the scale on everything set to 1. Just going to double check. Yep, that's all good. Cool. All right, so sorry, select everything. So we'll tab into edit mode. And what we want to do is we want to arrange all of these UVs so that they can fit into our UV space, because at the moment they're all over the shot. So for starters, let's just actually unpin everything, because we're not going to do any more unwrapping. So I'm happy with all this. So just Alt-P with everything selected to unpin. So I'm going to go Control-A to average the scale of everything relative to one another. And then let's just go Control-P. So we'll pack all this in. So I'll let things scale. I don't want to... no, we can do rotate. But let's do cardinal, so it's only on 90-degree increments. And I'm just going to change the margin here from 0.001 to 0.004, so a margin pixel of 4. And then I'm going to try with concave. So let's pack this. So that's a pretty woeful result, in all honesty. So what I'm going to do to try to get a better pack is I'm just going to select this bottom shape here. And I'm just going to go S.5, so just scale it down by half. I'm going to reselect everything, Control P, and let's not have it affect the scale this time. Let's pack. Okay, that's still not doing a great job, unfortunately, so let's just go back. Just before I do the pack. So I'm going to just Shift L select, oops, in face select mode, Shift L select the bottom part here. Oops. Have we averaged everything? Yep, Control P. I just want to see, what if I don't check scale? It's not going to adjust. Yeah, okay. So let's go Control P, scale, rotation, cardinal. Alright, that's a better pack. That's looking much nicer. And I'm going to go scale 0.5 on this. Actually, no. Hang on. Let me just have a look. Let's eyeball this. Sorry, so let's get a checker map. And I'm just going to look at the texel density down here. So I'm just going to scale this and eyeball it to roughly try to match up the texel density at the bottom there. So I think somewhere around there might be the correct size. I think these squares roughly match. Cool, and so now that I've got this roughly at the same size, S.5, so I'll reduce that by half. Cool, and let's just go Control P, so we won't adjust the scale this time, just want to see what we get. So that's a pretty decent pack, in all honesty, apart from the fact that this is actually sitting outside the bounds of our UV space. So I might just select this, I might just manually scale this down just ever so slightly, and move this in a bit, and scale it back up just a little bit. So in all honesty, I think you could get away with this pack. I think this is pretty good. And if we wanted to get a little bit more texel density here, in all honesty, I'm just going to put my cursor down to the bottom here, which I think would be just 0, 0. Yep. So I'm just going to do that. And I'm going to select everything but this square, so I'm just going to L-select this square UV here, Control-I to invert, and then I'm going to scale on the 2D cursor, and I'm just going to go constrain to image bounds, just to scale it up. So as soon as it stops scaling, that means something's hit the image boundary, so we can't go any further. So once I hit that point, I'm just going to drag it back just a bit, just so we're not getting any potential dead pixels. And in all honesty, I think this is pretty good. I don't think we're going to need to do a full manual setup. I think this packing result actually works quite nicely. I am just going to rotate, oops, bounding box. I'm just going to rotate this 180 degrees so it's sitting upright. And the tubing here, I'm just going to scale down again, just so that it fits on our UV space without overlapping, like that. Cool, so I think that actually turns out really nice, in all honesty. That's pretty good. Cool, I thought we were going to have to do a full manual set of UVs. So there's definitely room for optimizations here, right? Like, I think we could probably have these overlap here, but Blender's default tools for letting things overlap is really quite poor, and the way we've gone about this is just a little bit different than usual, just because we were applying mirror modifiers and doing all the sculpting, so there's more unique details spread around everywhere. So this probably could have been done a little bit differently, but I don't think it's going to be the end of the world. You could get like slightly higher texel densities, I suppose, if we did it a different way, but yeah, I'm just not going to risk trying to go for the overlaps on this one. I think we should have a fine set of UVs with this level of texel density here. The one area I do think will concern me just a little bit are these. I'm going to dedicate a little bit more texel density to these two UV islands, just because I don't think they're big enough, and I don't think the detail is going to bake down nicely into these. So I'm going to go S1.5. Oops. I should probably do that at individual origins. So S1.5. Let's go and turn the overlays off. Actually, what if I just double it? Yeah, let's go S2, because we do have more space up around the tops here. So I'm just going to place that there. This one over here. I know that probably makes it like not the correct average scale, but I think we can get away with it. And I just want to look at the scale, because this is just a little bit small here. I think I might scale, let's go scale 2, sorry. Just give this a little bit more texel density. Oops, I don't want to scale that up as well. Scale 2. And that might be a bit too large, but let's just drag it down into the corner here. Scale this up. Once again, not correct with the averages, but yeah, I think we'll just give that a little bit more texel density there, make it look nicer. And the rest of it, I think we should be okay with. Like, this is on the side earpieces. I think that's fine. Actually, the bolts on the side here, because I feel like those are an okay size. Okay, yeah. So I'm happy with this. Is it the best UV pack in the world? Definitely not. But I think it will work. So that should be fine. Actually, one thing I'm thinking here, just for the tubing, which is currently the square, I kind of feel like we might be able to benefit from scaling it and probably orienting it a different way, just to, because this like should be more rectangular, I'd assume. So I'm just going to select a row of faces here. Okay, so this row of faces are representing faces going along this way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scale this up along the Y, so I'll do it in relation to everything else. Technically, it might stretch our UVs a little bit. Is there a better spot that I could put this? Probably not. So I'm going to scale Y, and I know I'm getting some overlap there, but I'm just going to bring this out a bit. And I might even just scale the skull down just a little bit. Tiny amount, bring this more into the corner. And I'm just going to go GY, just drag this down. And so that's still overlapping in the corner there, so I'll just scale this down just a fraction. Move it across on the x-axis. Technically that stretches things, I suppose, but I think this just makes a little bit more sense given, you know, the length of these faces here is a lot longer, so I kind of feel like not everything should be perfectly square, because a loop running this way is a lot more condensed, right? Whereas a loop running this way is a lot longer. So I think that should hopefully help with things a little bit. And I might just actually move the scale and scale this up just a little bit as well. Don't want it to overlap. Like that. And just because we have done some manual adjustments, and that does leave you prone to making overlapping errors, and what we can do is we can just search for overlap. So we can just go select overlap, make sure that nothing is, and in this instance we're completely fine. But that's just a good way to check, because otherwise it will introduce some normal baking errors. And speaking of normals, what I want to do is let's just prepare the main helmet model for baking here. We're going to get some baking errors from this, but I just want to show you what we're going to be doing in the next tutorial as we do all of our texture baking and resolve these issues. Well, resolve most of them. I have kind of shot ourselves in the foot with the modeling process, but as I said earlier, that's what I get for trying to teach off of something I did a year ago. I wouldn't do the same things now. But what we're going to do is, first and foremost, let's just check the object data panel and go to geometry data. If here it says there are custom split normals, so if your menu looks like this and it says clear custom split normals, just clear that, because we don't want any custom split normal data on our helmet as of just yet. And then in edit mode, just go ahead, select one of the seams and go Shift and G, so select similar, and we'll select similar seam. We'll go Control E and we will mark sharp. And so you notice now we've got different shading along all of our UV seams. And so then with that, let's go to our modifiers. We don't need the subdiv. We want to apply the shrink wrap just so that we're bringing all that damage detail in. We can get rid of the checker map. What we want to do is we want to get a weighted normals modifier. And so we want to leave this set to face area, but you'll notice we've now gotten rid of our sharp details. So we just want to check this keep sharp influence here. And so once we've done that, actually what I'll do here, is I'll just Shift D to make a duplicate. I'm just going to move to a new collection, which is called these backups. And we'll do this in the next tutorial as well. So I'm just going to call this helmet LP underscore backup. Mind you, we did apply the shrink wrap, but I don't think that's too bad. We could technically go back and undo the shrink wrap and make a duplicate there, but I think we should be pretty safe at this stage. So I'm just going to hide that collection just in case we need it. So I'm going to go Control A to apply the weighted normals, and then we can go ahead and get a triangulation modifier. I've always set the quad method to beauty. I've got no backing for that. That's just what I believe works well. And then I think this is only a feature in Blender 4.5 and above, but this keep normals feature is great. So like if you noticed before, we sort of got some strange artifacts scattered around the mesh here, but this keep normals seems to fix a lot of those. It's not great around the front here, but we will address that in the next tutorial. And so with that, I'm just going to go Control A to apply that as well. Cool. So let's go to our UV editing tab again, and let's bake out a quick normal to just see how this is looking. So I'm just going to unhide our high poly here, and everything's very, very dense. And by the way, if you're getting performance issues, I probably should have mentioned this in the sculpting tutorial, but if we go to our preferences, and we go to the, is it the input? No, system. If you go to your system and change the graphics display, by default it'll be set to OpenGL. You'll have to test it, but try using Vulkan, because this is the new backend API. It could possibly give you better performance with much higher poly counts in your viewport here. I don't fully understand how it works, but I've switched over to it, and like, pretty noticeable difference. I think it works much more efficiently and effectively. So just if you are getting any performance issues, try doing that. Anyway, so with that, let's go ahead. We can select our helmet high poly and then shift select our helmet low poly. So you can see you've got those two selected. And then we'll just use text tools here just for a quick bake. So I'm just going to set this to 4K in my baking tab here. So I'm just going to set the ray distance to 0.1 and my cage extrusion to 0.05. Actually, is my scale applied for my high poly meshes? It is, cool. So select the high poly, select the low poly, and let's just do a bake here. And this will be fun because we'll actually be able to see those high poly details transferred down onto our low poly mesh. So I've got that here. And you'll notice there are some areas of the normal bake that look absolutely terrible, such as, you know, this green part here. It might be a different color on your normal bake. It just depends on the angle it's sitting at. And all these strange discolorations, right? So those are normal baking errors, but I will show you how to address most of it in the next tutorial. Unfortunately, as I said, the modeling methods I used just weren't great for normal baking. I just didn't really forward plan. But let's go, let's just select our low poly mesh. Let's go to our shading tab, and I'm just going to isolate our low poly mesh. Go to cycles. I'm just going to set up an HDRI really quick, just so I don't need to bother about doing any proper lighting setup. So let's just go to Studio HDRI. Just going to set the film to transparent, just so we're not being distracted by the background. And let's just bump this strength up to 3. Yeah, that looks good. And let's just make a new material for this so we can see the result of the bake. We'll get an image texture. I'm just going to plug that into the normal. Get a normal map node, plug that in, and then let's use our helmet normal tangent. And then if we come and have a look, I'll try a different HDRI. I kind of feel like this is all very washed out. Let's use this Misty Pines one, change the strength to 2, and I'm just going to use a math node here, set the multiply just to make it completely black and white so it's not getting washed out by color. Just bring this down. Yeah, we'll just go 1, not too bright. But now you can see we're getting all that nice high poly detail pulling through into our normal map here, which is really cool, especially when you look at our actual wireframe, right? It's very, very low poly, but you're getting all that nice detail that we sculpted in pull through. And yeah, it's more of a game sort of logic to asset creation and normal baking. It looked like this part I completely missed actually doing any retopology on, so I might go back and address that in my spare time, but even without that, it still pulls through pretty nicely. So yeah, but you'll notice at the back here, we're getting like this massive sort of like black artifact here, which doesn't really make much sense, but that is just a normal baking error. And very much on the inside here, but the inside error will clean up a little bit, but it's kind of hard to do so just because of the way I taught you guys to model this initially, where these two planes are very heavily intersecting, so that's my bad, but I'll show you how we can clean it up best we can in the next tutorial. And these errors in here, those ones are very easy to fix up. But yeah, I just wanted to give you guys a little show of what's to come, because I'm stoked with these results. It looks very, very cool. Very much more a game asset sort of modeling technique and normal baking. But yeah, so we'll address all that in the next tutorial, bake out all of our texture maps, and then we can take things over to texturing.